Welcome, welcome, welcome. Part of our continuing series where we talk to professors, reporters, writers, activists, columnists, anybody on the left, anybody on the right, anybody who can think clearly and provide useful insight on the topic of political polarization. We want to present those opinions and insights unedited and unaltered directly to you. Again, a lot of the professors who work in this space are busy, especially if they're good. And so we appreciate whatever time we could get. With us today, we were able to get one question answered from Professor Wesley Hussey, professor of political science at Sacramento State University. He's an associate professor of government and the social sciences, and he has expertise in California politics, American elections and politics, and direct democracy. Broad intersections between elections, voting, and political institutions, the political left and right voting together, and its implications for understanding American politics is something he studies. He has a PhD in political science from the University of California, Los Angeles, and also a bachelor's from UC Irvine, very well educated, and his focus is in political science. So I asked him, do you see any reason to believe that we will naturally get out of this level of political polarization we are experiencing? It'll just naturally come to an end. No, I don't think that will happen. And I think the reason is this Washington Post article does a good job of summarizing the fear among political scientists. This is why I was really glad to get this email. He was saying, no, and he wasn't really going to explain it himself, but he said this summarizes a lot of what other political scientists are thinking about political polarization. They too may also feel it won't naturally get better on its own, just as the professor here does. So what did this article say? Well, here's the article. American democracy is cracking. These forces help explain why in Washington Post on 2023. First one they say is the big sort. In more routine ways, the political system feeds frustration and discontent with its incapacity to respond to the public's needs. There's little on the horizon to suggest solutions. The newer element, which has gathered strength in recent decades, is the deepening polarization in the political system. Various factors have caused this: shifts within the two parties that have enlarged the ideological gap between them, and geographic sorting that has widened the differences between red and blue, a growing urban-rural divide. That's one thing they said was a cause. We've covered that here. Another one was state legislatures in Washington. Political divisions have led to gridlock and inaction in many issues. In the states, the opposite has occurred because states increasingly become either mostly red or mostly blue. Getting back to the big sort, we're talking about how states are becoming all red or all blue, polarizing the country. And that means that they're no longer open to listening to the other candidates, and they're no longer battleground states or competitive states. They're hardcore Republican or hardcore blue, and we already know how they're going to vote. The other one is, as we were talking about today with another professor, tyranny of the minority. The minority of the population can exercise outsized influence. Policies and leadership leading many Americans increasingly to feel the government is captive of minority rule. They were looking at two different presidents who were elected without the popular vote, and looking at the Supreme Court, which now has many justices on it that the public don't like. Tyranny of the minority. Tom. And a little bit more on that. Republicans tend to have full control in less populated states, creating an imbalance in the number of senators they send to Washington and the percentage of the national population they represent. We routinely cover that with the Norman Ornstein quote. Individual institutions have suffered as well. Of late, it's the Supreme Court's reputation that has been damaged due to rulings that have gone against popular opinion and a heightened sense that the court has become politicized. For Congress, the decline has been ongoing for decades. Only Wall Street and television news have seen more precipitous declines in trust over the past 4 decades. So we've covered this a little bit, but there's a lack of trust in basically every institution out there except for the military. We've covered that routinely in the federal government. So the Supreme Court, Congress, the presidency, all the regulatory agencies, Wall Street, television news, the media, lack of trust of the public amongst them all. And then this comes back to the big sort with Bill Bishop, the lack of landslide election counties or the increase of landslide election counties, as we've been saying. If you look at presidential elections and congressional elections at the county level, they've become increasingly hardcore red or hardcore blue. And there's very few counties that are competitive. Most counties in America today are landslide election counties, which means they always vote red or always vote blue. And it's been this way for 2 to 3 decades. So they're saying we don't have competitive elections, and we used to have competitive counties mostly in America, And now we have mostly landslide election counties, something we've covered here. And then Fiorina. On abortion, most Americans opposed last year's Supreme Court decision in Dobbs versus Jackson's Women's Health Organization, which ended the constitutional right to abortion. On guns, big majorities favor individual proposals to tighten laws, but the gun lobbying remains powerful enough to block action. On immigration, there's been a majority for some years favoring tougher border controls along with the path to citizenship with some penalties. Every effort to deal with this in Congress over the past 2 decades has failed. So Fiorina was talking about how Morris Fiorina has been saying there really isn't polarization in America for what this section is calling out. The people generally agree about how to deal with abortion. The people generally agree how to deal with guns. The people generally agree with how to deal with immigration, but they don't get what they want. The legislators in Congress have very different ideas about guns, abortion, and immigration. The American public do not. So there's a disconnect between the elites and the people. Fiorina said the people are not polarized. The elites are. The elites are effectively polarized, which means they just don't like each other, but they don't have real policy differences. There's still some similarity in what they want, but there's polarization because none of the things that the majority of America wants seem to happen. That's Morris Fiorina laid that out. And that's it. So those are the reasons why many political scientists believe things are not going to get better and what the problems are. And that comes from this professor. And we want to say thank you for your time, your insight, and recommending the article. And we'll leave it there. And we'll see you again soon. Thank you very much.